Tyler opens a high-yield savings account and becomes, overnight, the most financially responsible person in his friend group. 5% interest, FDIC insured, zero risk. He texts his college friend a screenshot at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. "Bro, that's actually smart," his friend replies. For once, Tyler agrees with someone about money. Nate sees the same ad, hears the same pitch, opens the same browser tab. He closes it, drops his savings into a total market index fund instead, sets up a monthly auto contribution, and goes back to whatever he was doing before. There is something deliberate about how quickly he moves on. No second guessing, no excitement. He has thought about this before and the thinking is already done. His coworkers ask what he's invested in. Index funds. They nod. Nobody asks a follow-up. There is no screenshot. There is no congratulations text. 2 years later, Tyler has a growing balance, a sense of financial progress, and the comfortable certainty that he made the smart call. Nate has a thinner liquid account and a brokerage balance most people in his life have never thought to ask about. Run the numbers forward 15 years, and the gap between them is not subtle. The uncomfortable part is that Tyler's account never went down once. That's not a coincidence. That's exactly the problem. If you have money sitting in a high-yield savings account right now, Tyler is not a cautionary tale. He made a reasonable decision with incomplete information. That is the part worth understanding. Here is what the advertisement is actually selling you. 4.8% APY. No fees, no minimum balance. Open in 5 minutes. Compare that to the 0.01%. Your checking account has been paying since roughly the first iPhone, and it sounds like the system left a door unlocked and you found it before anyone noticed. Tyler moved $40,000 in during the rate surge of 2022 and 2023. The Federal Reserve was hiking aggressively to fight inflation. High-yield accounts were advertising 4.5%, some crossing 5%. Tyler's account generated $166 in interest at the end of month 1 for doing absolutely nothing. He checked his balance more than he needed to. Not anxiety, satisfaction. This was money that had been sitting in a checking account doing effectively nothing for years. Now it had a job. He felt for the first time like someone who understood how money actually works. One line in the terms and conditions would have told him something important. He did not read it. The rate is variable. Variable means it tracks the Federal Reserve. Fed raises, the HYSA rate climbs. Fed cuts, and they always cut eventually, the HYSA rate follows it down, sometimes within weeks, sometimes before the notification email feels urgent enough to open. In late 2023, the Fed began cutting rates. The accounts advertising 5% started quietly repricing, 4.6%, then 4.1%, then 3.7% and still moving. Tyler checked his rate about 6 months in. Lower. He looked into switching to a different institution, found one with a better number, bookmarked it, told himself he'd move the money when things slowed down at work. He mentioned the rate to a coworker once. "You should just move it," she said. "I switched mine last month. Still getting 4.5." "Yeah," Tyler said. "I need to look into that." She nodded. That was 11 months ago. Things did not slow down at work. The money stayed. The rate kept drifting. And Tyler kept saying he'd get around to it, which is the universal language of letting a situation manage itself. There is a specific kind of inertia that only happens when something is almost working. If Tyler's rate had dropped to 0.5%, he would have acted immediately. But 3.7% still beats a checking account, and the gap between that and the best available rate is small enough to feel manageable on a Tuesday, and then again on Thursday, and then every week until 14 months have passed. The urgency never arrives because the situation is always technically fine. Technically fine is the most expensive condition a savings account can be in. His account still beat a regular savings account. Still true, he was still earning more than he used to. Also still true, he just wasn't ahead of Nate. And he didn't know it because he wasn't looking at Nate's account. Nobody was. Here is the number the advertisement has never printed in a banner. real return. Not the percentage on the screen, the percentage after inflation. In 2022 and 2023, when HYSA rates were peaking at 5%, inflation was running between 6% and 9% at its worst. The account balance grew. Purchasing power did not. You could see one of those things every time you logged in. The other one was invisible, which is largely why nobody talked about it. Here is what that meant in practice. Your $40,000 grew to $42,000. You gained $2,000 on paper. Meanwhile, the same grocery run that cost $400 in January cost $430 by November. Your rent renewed at a higher number. The repair on your car cost more than the identical repair would have cost 18 months earlier. The $42,000 in your account could buy meaningfully less than your original $40,000 could have bought at the start of the year. You gained $2,000 and lost purchasing power simultaneously. Only one of those showed up on your phone. At a typical spread of 3.5% HYSA rate and 3% inflation, your real return is roughly 0.5 to 1% per year. Tyler had $40,000 earning 4%. That is $1,600 in interest. At 3% inflation, the real value of that $40,000 declined by $1,200 over the same year. His actual gain in purchasing power terms? Approximately $400. On $40,000. $400. He did not know this. He logged in, saw $41,600, and felt like he was winning. Technically, he was. By $400. Nate's index fund at 9% average annual return minus 3% inflation produces a real return of 6 to 7%. On the same $40,000 in the same year, that is $2,400 to $2,800 in real wealth created. Same capital, 7 times the real outcome. But the market crashes, Tyler says. He is not wrong. We will get there. Let's follow the numbers. Tyler keeps $40,000 in a HYSA and contributes $400 a month. Nate invests $40,000 in a total market index fund and also contributes $400 a month. Conservative HYSA rate, 3.5%. Conservative market return, 9%. Year 1. Tyler, roughly $45,700. Nate, roughly $46,400. Essentially a tie. Tyler feels completely justified. Year 2. Tyler, approximately $49,500. Nate, approximately $55,000. The gap is $5,500. Tyler has not looked at Nate's account. His own is still rising, and rising is all he is tracking. Year 3. Tyler, approximately $53,200. Nate, approximately $61,800. The gap is $8,600. Tyler hasn't checked Nate's balance. He's still looking at his own, which is still going up. Year 5. Tyler, approximately $62,500. Nate, approximately $80,400. The gap is nearly $18,000. More than Tyler has earned in interest across all 5 years. The thing he was proud of has been quietly lapped by the thing Nate never brings up at lunch. Year 7. Tyler, approximately $72,000. Nate, approximately $102,000. Nate crosses $100,000. Tyler does not know this. Year 10. Tyler, approximately $87,000. Nate, approximately $134,000. The gap is $47,000. Tyler's account has not gone down once in 10 years. Every single month the balance was higher than the month before. No crashes, no red numbers, no checking the portfolio at 6 a.m. before work with a specific kind of dread. That unbroken, smooth upward line is the feature. It is also exactly why the gap is $47,000. Comfort has a price. It just shows up in someone else's column. Here's the thing about a line that never goes down. It trains you to see stability as success. Every month, the number goes up, and the monthly ritual of checking the app confirms the decision. There is never a red month that forces the question. Never a crash that demands you think about what the account is actually for. The account is always performing in the narrow sense of performing, which is to say it is always delivering a number higher than the last one. That reliable small upward movement is genuinely pleasing. It is also the exact mechanism by which 5 years of compounding difference quietly accumulates while you are busy being satisfied. If you're the kind of person who finds this interesting, you're exactly who Vaulted Finance is built for. Subscribe and let us know where you're watching from. Now, where were we? Here is something the welcome email does not mention. Your $40,000 does not sit in a vault waiting for you. The moment it lands in a high-yield savings account, the bank lends it out. Mortgages at 7%, auto loans at 8 and 9%, personal loans at 14%, credit cards at 24%. They take your deposit, lend it at a spread significantly higher than what they pay you and keep the difference. That is not a conspiracy. It is a business model, the oldest one in banking. They need deposits to fund loans. They advertise a rate to attract your balance. They pay you 3.5% and earn 7% on the other side of the same transaction. They are investing your money, paying you the wholesale rate, selling it at retail. You could cut out the arrangement entirely. Invest directly. Keep the full return. The bank is not doing anything with your capital that you cannot do yourself. They are just doing it with less paperwork on your end and considerably more profit on theirs. Tyler's brother-in-law walks him through this at a family dinner, draws it out on a napkin. So they're using my money to make money, Tyler says. At 7%, his brother-in-law says, and paying you 3.5%. Tyler stares at the napkin. That's kind of annoying. That's the business model, his brother-in-law says. Has been since the first bank. A diversified index fund does exactly what the bank does with your money, minus the bank. It deploys capital into the broader market, earns a return, and passes that return to you in full, minus a management fee of roughly 0.03% to 0.07%, depending on the fund. The bank's management fee is the 3.5 percentage points of return they keep instead of passing to you. Those are different numbers. But investing is risky, Tyler says. Also not wrong. Let's talk about it. In 2008, markets fell roughly 37%. In March 2020, they dropped 34% in a matter of weeks. If you had $100,000 invested and watched it become $63,000 while the news ran wall-to-wall coverage of financial collapse, that is not an abstract statistic. That is a visceral, specific experience. People who lived through 2008 still talk about it in a particular tone. And the behavioral data is clear. Most retail investors sell during crashes and buy back in after the recovery. They lock in losses at the exact worst moment. The market decline is not what destroys their long-term returns. Their own response to the decline is what does it. Tyler's HYSA went up in March 2020, earned $133 that month in interest. He slept fine. Nate's portfolio dropped significantly. He did not sell. He checked it twice, both times closed the app, and watched something on television instead. By December 2020, his portfolio had fully recovered. By mid-2021, it was meaningfully higher than before the crash. Tyler's strategy protects you from market volatility. Nate's strategy protects you from the panic response that turns volatility into permanent loss. One of those is a harder problem to solve. Only one of them leads to a $47,000 gap. There are specific situations where a high-yield savings account is the genuinely correct answer, not a compromise. Short-term goal with a hard deadline inside 2 years. Down payment, car, business launch, a specific target with a specific date. Keep that money in a HYSA. If the market drops 30% 14 months before your closing date, you cannot wait for a recovery. The account protects the timeline. That is not fear. That is correct planning for a specific horizon. Rebuilding after financial disruption. Coming out of debt, starting over, learning the habit again. The visible month-by-month growth of a savings account gives you feedback that matters psychologically when you are relearning how to accumulate money. The HYSA is the right tool for that stage. Return optimization comes later. The account is not the problem. Treating it as the entire answer is. Most people need 3 to 6 months of real expenses in a liquid, stable account. For someone spending $3,500 a month, that is $10,500 to $21,000 in a HYSA. The emergency fund. Everything above that line is capital paying for comfort. It has no particular reason to be paying for. If your balance is $80,000 and your emergency fund is $15,000, the remaining $65,000 is not a safety net. It is a very expensive way to store long-term savings. At a 5.5% difference in return between a HYSA and a diversified index fund, conservative estimate, that $65,000 is costing you roughly $3,575 per year in foregone returns. That does not register as a loss because it is money you never received. It is considerably harder to feel a number you never see. Year 15. Where they land. Tyler. $40,000 starting. $400 a month. 3.5% average across 15 years. Final balance. Approximately $116,000 to $121,000. Nate. Same starting amount, same monthly contribution. 9% average annual return. Final balance. Approximately $222,000 to $240,000. The gap is $100,000 to $120,000. Not from risk-taking, not from stock picking or market, timing, or anything requiring expertise. From putting money into a diversified index fund and leaving it alone. From doing, functionally, almost nothing. For 15 years. Tyler's account went up every single month without exception. That smooth, unbroken line is precisely why the gap is 6 figures. The safety was real. The cost of the safety was just never printed anywhere. Tyler did not make a reckless decision. He made an incomplete one. He found a rate, felt the security, and optimized for the number he could see every time he opened the app. He just never ran the math on what that security was quietly costing him each year. Emergency fund. Short-term goals with hard timelines. Money you genuinely need liquid in the next 2 years. That money belongs in a HYSA. That is the job it was designed for. Everything above that line is capital paying a comfort premium it has no reason to pay. Sitting in savings. Growing at less than 1% in real terms. Watching the gap with Nate compound in silence. You found the account. The rate looked right. For part of your money, it was the right call. The question is whether you know which part. Because the trap was never the account. The trap was thinking the account was enough. And if you want to know exactly how to split it, how much stays liquid, how much goes into the market, and how to calculate where your specific line sits based on your income and real monthly expenses, that is a completely different conversation. The number it gives you might change how you look at everything you are currently holding. For now, check the rate your HYSA is actually paying today. Not the rate you opened it with, the rate right now. Then look at your total balance. Then ask yourself one question. How much of this genuinely needs to be this safe? The honest answer is probably smaller than the number on your screen. If this changed how you think about where your savings are sitting, drop a comment. Tell me how much you currently have in a high-yield savings account. And if you want to see this math applied to more accounts, most people set up once and never question again, subscribe. The next one might cost you more than this one did.